All right, on the back of the Prime Minister's announcement last night, longtime advocate for the Procurement Act, Afra Raymond, joins us now. Mr. Raymond, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us. What do you make of the Prime Minister's statement that Parliament will reconvene, I should rather say, on Wednesday to make these amendments?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on CNC3 to discuss this important issue. And answering your question, I am pleased that the Prime Minister has announced that he would reconvene Parliament to have this law rectified. And what has concerned me is that earlier today I received a copy of the draft rectification, the amendment that the Prime Minister and the government are proposing. And that rectification speaks to further exemptions, the ministerial exemptions being granted under a negative resolution of Parliament. And my concern is that that negative resolution of Parliament, that process for approval with a negative resolution, is contrary to what Parliament agreed on the 8th of December 2020. It's there in Hansard. Because of the exceptional nature, after the list of exemptions for legal and accounting and banking and all of those ones, there is the ministerial power to grant an exemption to anything in his discretion, whoever the minister is. And that ministerial power was felt to be so exceptional and have the potential to undermine the Procurement Act. People in the Parliament spoke up against it, and Minister Imbert agreed. It's on page 202 of the Hansard of the 8th of December 2020. Minister Imbert agreed, he accepted the arguments, and he said, yes, we will change this part and we will make it an affirmative resolution. Now, what an affirmative resolution means is that an intended exemption is going to be tabled in Parliament, the same way that this rectification bill was tabled, so that the public will know, the media will know, and the opposition and the political forces will know, so that we, on all of this, the government and the Procurement Act, all of this is to serve our interests as the public. We would be aware of what is intended before it happens and have the opportunity to take political action or other action to balance the situation out. And that's why it's very important.
Right. But Mr. Raymond, the Prime Minister claimed that the government was facing public pressure to proclaim the law. Do you feel that's an accurate statement?
There was pressure. I was one of the people putting pressure. A number of us were putting pressure. I agree. There was pressure. And that's a good thing because we are pressuring for betterment. It's a betterment to our country, to the future of our country. I agree. We were pressuring.
But having said that, Mr. Raymond, what do you make of the Prime Minister's defense that it takes 2 months, sometimes it takes a little bit long to procure these goods and services, and in an event where there's something, let's just say, like CARICOM heads of government meeting that came that just popped up in the country, how do you respond to that? How does a government, work with that?
I mean, I don't know how our 50th anniversary pops up.
Okay, let's use any other example that may come up in the future.
The CARICOM thing will not stand in terms of reasonable people. It will not stand. We knew the people who were responsible, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, they knew months in advance, okay? That is facts. This did not pop up. So we need to be really careful because there's a deliberate attempt to mix things up. There are emergencies. You can have floods, you can have explosions, you can have a wasser line breaking, you can have emergencies. But this was not an emergency.
Right.
Let us be totally honest and fair with each other.
So, Mr. Raymond, was there any justification for breaking the law?
Well, let's talk about that. That's a good question. The way the law is written, the amendment of 2020, the way it's written, the literal reading of it, which is the reason they have to go and fix it now. The literal reading of it is that, in fact, the Minister of Finance can make an order to create a fresh exemption without going to Parliament. That's the way it's written. The actual text says that. That is not the correct way to interpret it. Because, in fact, if we go to court, and I know there are a couple of court cases pending, I'm not a lawyer, but if that matter were put to a court to decide, to do what is called an interpretation of the law, there's something called an interpretation summons. The court, in interpreting the law, will not just look at the text, the court will also look at the text of Hansard, who said what. And what is more, because we talked about the 8th of December 2020, on the 11th of December 2020, there was a discussion in Parliament a few days after the law had passed. And in that discussion, colleagues in the Parliament were saying, hang on, this is not what we discussed, this is not what we agreed, this what's printed here is not what we agreed. And at page 43 of that day's Hansard, Mr. Imbert agrees. I agree, this is not what we discussed. We agreed on affirmative resolution, we need to have this rectified. So Mr. Imbert was fully well aware that in fact, the provisions for ministerial exemption were not written the correct way. It was a typo, let's use the word typo. We've all worked in offices at different times, a typo that occurred, a human error. And he agreed, page 43 of the Hansard, 11th of December 2020.
But was there any attempt to fix it?
Well, not as far as I know, but which makes the two exemptions, because there's an exemption for the judiciary that took place on the 29th of May, and there's the CARICOM and diplomatic exemption. Both of them are 3-month exemptions, and the second one took place on the 29th of June, which makes those two exemptions, in my opinion, egregious. We have had the same individual as Minister of Finance for the whole of the last 8 years, and how much it is, September 2015 to now. Mr. Imbert was the person who spoke on the 8th of December. He spoke on the 11th of December 2020. Okay, humans make errors, but the fact is that Mr. Imbert, who's an intelligent, well-educated man, learned in the law, understood that what was in that law was not what was discussed. And he admitted on the 11th of December, this is wrong and we have to fix this.
Mr. Raymond, just very quickly.
He used that to pass two exemptions.
Mr. Raymond, we're running out of time, but I have to ask you very quickly, what amendments would you suggest then as we reconvene Parliament on Wednesday, or supposedly Parliament will reconvene? Quickly,
the answer to it is that we have to conform to what Parliament agreed on the 8th of December 2020, which is that any further ministerial exemptions have to be subject to affirmative resolution. That's the answer.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Raymond, for chatting with us
Thank you very much
on this latest development.